There was a man standing there wearing a grimy apron. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing thick forearms. They bore several scars, but it was impossible to tell whether they'd been made by a sword or a beast. His features fell somewhere between intensely masculine and wild animal. There were also scars on his face. His head was shaved clean, not a single hair remained. This man, with a mop in one hand, seemed more like a hired guard than the innkeeper. He had been openly observing Aints. "You need a room, eh? How many nights?" His gruff voice boomed. "One, please, a copper plate. It'll be 5 coppers for a shared room," the innkeeper said brusquely. "Food is oatmeal, well, some days it's leftover bread instead of oatmeal and vegetables. If you want meat, that's a copper extra. If possible, I'd like a room for just the 2 of us." Aints heard a faint snort. "There are 3 inns that serve adventurers in this city. The one at the bottom is mine." "You were introduced by the guild, right? Do you know how I can tell?" "No, I don't. Will you tell me?" At Aints' swift reply, the innkeeper's eyebrows tilted to a dangerous angle. "Think a bit. Or don't you have anything inside that fancy helmet of yours?" Aints wasn't fazed by the irritated voice. He could take the outburst as he would take a tantrum thrown by a child. His experience in the battle the other day helped him understand how powerful he was. He didn't need to get riled up about being shouted at. The innkeeper noticed that attitude and emitted a faint hum of admiration. "Seems like you have some guts, eh? The adventurers who stay here are generally copper or iron plates. If you ray around the same ability level and start to recognize each other, you might decide to form a team and go adventuring together. My place is a perfect spot to look for team members." The innkeeper's eyes widened into an intimidating stare. "I don't mind if you want to sleep in your own room, but if you don't meet people, you can make friends. And if you can organize a balanced team, you'll die fighting a monster. That's why newcomers who don't have enough friends get themselves known by staying in a large room. So I'll ask you one more time, do you want a shared room or a 2-person room?" "A 2-person room. No need for meals. I am just trying to be nice, or are you saying that your full plate armor isn't just for show?" "Well, whatever. 1 night is 7 coppers up front, naturally." The innkeeper stuck out his hand. Under the room's appraising eyes, Aints, followed by Narbarrel, moved to go when suddenly a leg was thrust into his way. Aints stopped and, moving only his eyes, looked at the man the leg belonged to. He had a thin, nasty smile on his face. The others at his table were either smiling in the same way or staring at Aints and Narbarrel. Neither the innkeeper nor any of the customers intervened. At a glance, it seemed they either didn't care or were amused, as if something interesting had started. However, a few people had sharp gazes, watching their every move. "Sheesh." Aints breathed a faint sigh and shoved the leg away with his foot. As if he'd been waiting for that, the man stood up. He wasn't wearing armor, so it was clear he was well muscled under his clothes. A chain with a plate similar to the one Aints was wearing, but iron swung from his neck as he moved. "Hey, that hurt," he implied a threat as he slowly sidled up. At some point he had grabbed his gauntlets and put them on. When he formed fists, the metal made a chilling squeak. The 2 sized each other up from a distance that was a bit too close for throwing punches. They were about the same height. Aints made the first move. "Oh, I didn't see your leg there. With this close helmet on, my field of vision isn't so great. Or maybe I didn't see it because it is so stubby anyhow. You'll forgive me, right? You bastard." A dangerous glint appeared in the man's eyes in response to Aints' taunting. But when his gaze shifted behind Aints to Narbarrel, something new got lodged where the anger had been. "You really piss me off, but hey, I am a nice guy. If you lend your lady to me for a night, I'll let you off the hook." "Ha ha ha ha." Aints burst out laughing and put a hand out to stay Narbarrel, who had begun to move forward. "What? No, it's just that what you said just now was such a textbook example of something a little punk would say that I couldn't help but laugh. Forgive me." "Huh." Now his indignation showed on his face, which had grown red in patches. "Oh, before this comes to blows, can I ask you something? Are you stronger than Gaze of Stronov?" "Huh, what are you talking about?" "I see, that reaction will do. I guess I won't even be able to use enough of my power to have any fun. Time to fly." Aints whipped out his hands and grabbed the man's collar to lift him off the ground. Unable to resist, much less dodge, before being hoisted into the air, the man cried a startled whoa. The men watching the commotion grew audibly excited. How strong would a person have to be to lift a grown man off the ground with one hand? There was no one in the room with so little imagination they couldn't guess. The stir was followed by a collective held breath. Aints shattered the tense air of astonishment by taking the frantically kicking man and lightly tossing him across the room lightly from Aints' perspective. The man's body ascended with impressive velocity, almost to the ceiling. It then described the rest of its parabola and fell heavily onto a table. The impact of the body, the shattering of the things on the table, wood splitting, and the man's pained voice, all these sounds overlapped in a cacophony that resounded throughout the room. Then, as if the noise were dampened by the man's groan, silence descended. But a beat later, Nyarog, a strange yell came out of the mouth of the woman who'd been sitting at the table, a scream from her soul that said something unthinkable had occurred. It was a natural way to react to a man falling down on her table, but this was definitely about something else. So, now what are you gonna do? It would be a pain to fight you each one-on-one, not to mention a ridiculous waste of time, so you can come at me all at once if you want. Aints addressed the rest of the men sitting where the first one had been. Catching his implication, they all hurried to bow their heads. Oh, how rude of our friend. Allow us to apologize. Sure, you ray forgiven. This was no problem for me at all. Just make sure you pay the innkeeper for that table. Of course, we'll take care of that. That's settled, then. Aints had just started walking away when someone else called out to him. Hey, he turned to look. The woman who screamed earlier was striding his way. She was probably 20 or a little younger. Her red hair was cut to practical length. It wasn't remotely even, no matter how generously one regarded it. It looked more like a bird's nest. Her face wasn't bad, but she wore no makeup. Bitterness shone in her eyes. Her skin was tanned to a healthy wheat color. The muscles on her arms stood out, as did the sword calluses on her hands. She made a first impression of warrior, not woman. An iron plate hung around her neck, swinging with each step she took. What do you think you doing? What do you mean what, huh? You don't even know what you did. She pointed to the broken table. You threw that guy and my potion, my precious potion, broke. What were you thinking, throwing around a huge thing like that? My point. Oh man, her eyes grew sharper and her voice lower. I demand compensation for my potion. It's just a potion. I skipped meals and scrimped and saved, desperately economizing, all to buy that potion today, and you broke it. I was trusting that potion to save my life on a dangerous adventure. Is this your attitude after you crush my dreams? I am seriously pissed. She took another step toward Aints. Her wide-open eyes were bloodshot. She looked like an enraged bull. Aints suppressed a sigh. It had been careless of him to not look before throwing, but there was a specific reason he wouldn't agree to compensate her so easily. So why don't you collect from that guy? If he hadn't been so desperate to stretch out his stubby little leg, this wouldn't have happened, right? He glared at the man's friends through the slit in his helmet. Oh, but well, you can give me another potion or pay me the equivalent. Either way, but it cost 1 gold piece and 10 silvers. The men looked at their feet. Apparently they didn't have the money to pay her back, so the woman looked back at Aints. Figures, they ray always here drinking themselves into a stupor. Why would they have any money? But you ray wearing that fancy armor, so you must have at least a low-grade healing potion on you, right? I see, thought Aints, so that's why she started by asking me. Things had gotten complicated. One wrong move could ruin everything. He thought for a moment, and then made up his mind. I do, but are you certain it was a healing potion? Duh, I worked so hard, yeah, I got that part. I'll give you a potion, let's call it even. He took out a minor healing potion and held it out to the woman. She gave it a dubious look, and then made a sullen face and took it. So there's no problem anymore? I guess it's fine. It sounded a little like there still might be an issue, but Aints cleared the doubts from his mind. He had more important things to worry about, like whether Narbarul was about to commit a fatal error. Even though he settled things, she was clearly still on edge. Several bystanders seemed to sense this, and they had anxious looks on their faces. Let's go, Aints said, partly to check on Narbarul, and stood before the innkeeper. Then he casually pulled a leather pouch from his pocket, took out a silver coin, and dropped it into the innkeeper's rough hand. The innkeeper stuffed the coin into his pocket without a word. When he brought his hand out again, it was clutching a few copper pieces. Okay then, 6 coppers is your change. He dropped the coins into Aints' gauntleted hand and set a key on the counter with a ka-ching. Up the stairs and first on your right. Put your luggage in the chests built into the beds. I don't think I have to tell you, but don't go near other people's rooms for no reason. If somebody thinks you up to something, there'll be trouble. Although if you want people to know who you are, I guess that's one way to do it. Seems like you could handle almost any trouble that might arise. Just don't make any form. The innkeeper's eyes flitted for a moment to the man still moaning on the floor. Got it. Also, please outfit me with the minimum provisions necessary for adventuring. I lost everything I had. When I asked at the guild, they said you'd be able to. The innkeeper looked at the things Aints and Narbrel were wearing, and then eyed the leather pouch. Yeah, sure thing. I'll have it all ready for you by dinner time. Make sure you're ready to pay. Right. Okay, Nabe, let us go. Narbrel followed Aints up the old staircase that shrieked as it creaked. They headed to their assigned room. Once Aints was gone, the comrades of the man who'd been thrown hurried to cast healing magic on him. As if that were the trigger, the silent inn suddenly began to stir. So that guy's actually as tough as he looks, huh? Yeah, that strength is something else. I wonder how he trained. Didn't have any other weapons besides those two great swords, but that must just show how confident he is. Arg, another guy who seems like he could knock us all flying at once. The conversations conveyed admiration, wonder, and astonishment. Actually, everyone had known from the start that Aints wasn't a typical adventurer. The first clue was his impressive gear. Full plate armor did not come cheaply. Only someone who had gone on adventure after adventure, someone with a lot of experience, could afford to buy it. Considering only rewards, someone who earned a silver plate might have that kind of fortune. Of course, some people inherited gear or picked up things in ruins or on the battlefield. That's why they wanted to test how powerful he really was. Everyone at this inn was friendly with one another, but they were also rivals. If a new guy showed up, everyone wanted to know how strong he was, so incidents like the one that had just happened were common. Actually, they had all taken their turn running this gauntlet, but no one could ask themselves if they had made it through so easily and say yes. It was clear to everyone that whether they were friends or foes, the unfamiliar pair with the copper plates possessed genuine strength. How should we treat them now? Guess I can talk to that pretty lady ever again. If it's just the two of them, they can join my team. You mean you'll beg them to join? I wonder what his face looks like under that helmet. I am gonna camp outside their room and listen in tonight. He name-dropped Gaze of Stronov, the strongest warrior around. Do you think he is his apprentice? Could be. A job that important should be left up to me. I am a thief with excellent hearing. In the midst of all the chatter about the unknown pair, the innkeeper walked up to one adventurer, in particular the woman who had received the potion from Aints. Hey, Brita. What? The woman Brita moved only her eyes from the red potion she'd been staring at and looked at him with disinterest. What's up with that potion? Dunno, Simo. Now what do you mean dunno? You only took it because you knew how much it was worth, right? Yeah, right. Actually, I've never seen a potion like this before. You ray over here looking at it because you haven't either, right? It was just as she said. You ray okay with that? He really did break your potion, you know. This one might be worth less than the one you had. Yeah, it is definitely a gamble, but I feel like I'll come out ahead this time. After all, that guy with his fancy armor offered this after hearing how much my potion was worth. Oh, plus, I've never seen a healing potion this color before. That means there's a good chance it's a pretty rare find, right? If I hesitated, it would have been like going into a dragon's nest and bringing home nothing. Anyway, tomorrow I'll go get it appraised. Then I'll know how much it's worth. Oh yeah, then let me cover the appraisal fees for you. And not only that, but I'll introduce you to top-notch place. You do that? Brita's eyebrows scrunched together. The innkeeper was a good man, but he wasn't a softy. He had to have an ulterior motive. Now, don't make that face. All you have to do is tell me what effects the potion has. That's the deal, huh? Not a bad one, is it? And with my connections, I can introduce you to the best potion maker around Lizzie Baylor. Brita's face showed her genuine surprise. Rantel was a place where many mercenaries and adventurers gathered. It was home to a flourishing market for buying and selling weapons and items aimed at them. The potion business was particularly brisk. There were many more apothecaries there than in other cities. Out of all of them, Lizzie Baylor was known as the best. She could make the most complex potions of any of the city's apothecaries. Once the name of the best apothecary in Rantel had been brought up, The offer was no longer one Brita could refuse. The wooden door gently clapped shut. The only furnishings in the room were one small desk and two simple wooden beds with chests built in. Since the shutters were open, sunlight and air came in directly. Aints looked around the room, slightly disappointed. He knew he was at an inn on the outskirts of town, and couldn't he expect the same facilities and cleanliness as at Nazareth? But this setup put him on his guard. That you should have to stay in such a place, Lord Momon, is so don't he say that. Our goal is to gain a reputation in this city as adventurers. We have to aim for the top so everyone will know my name. Until then, adopting the lifestyle of the part can hurt. Aints comforted her, showing no sign of his inner feelings as he closed the shutters. The light that came in through the gaps in the shutters was not enough to banish the room's darkness completely. Aints and Narbarrel could use dark vision, so it didn't affect them. But for anyone who couldn't do that, this room would probably be too dark to see much of anything. A man being an adventurer is more depressing than I thought. Adventurer. The word had held some fascination for Aints. They traveled the world in pursuit of the unknown. He'd been imagining it as an occupation that embodied the correct way to play Yggdrasil, but after talking to the receptionist at the guild, he realized it was more practical and boring. In a nutshell, an adventurer is an anti-monster mercenary. They do resemble the adventurers Aints had been dreaming of in some ways. For example, there are opportunities to explore ruins. There's also wreckage from the country destroyed by the evil spirits that appeared there 200 years ago, and they can pursue the unknown in unexplored regions, but they are basically monster exterminators. Monsters have various special abilities depending on their type. This is why tackling them requires people with a larger variety of skills countermeasures than soldiers have. Given that, one might think they'd be in a position like the hero in a video game, with many people depending on them, but that was not the case. The ruling classes weren't too keen on having armed groups roaming around outside of their control. For that reason, adventurers weren't highly regarded, even if they were doing well financially. Countries used the same logic as corporations. Full-time employees cost money, so it was cheaper to hire temp workers as needed. Some countries didn't need adventurers at all. Their army could subdue the monsters. In those places, an adventurer's status was even lower. The lady behind the desk at the guild grumbled that there were no adventurers in the slain theocracy. She also said the standing of adventurers in the Baharuth Empire had been falling since the current emperor came to power. Aints cleared the faint disappointment from his mind. It wasn't uncommon to discover a dream job wasn't all it was cracked up to be. He waved his hand loosely. His raven black armor and two great swords melted into thin air, revealing his skeletal figure wrapped in magic items. Every now and then, a red target sight appeared on his thin black mirrored shades and then disappeared. The amethyst circlet around his head looked like a rose vine. The outside had a number of thorns sticking out. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt with a silky sheen. On bottom, he wore baggy pants. Around his waist was something closer to a black martial arts belt than a simple belt. He took off his unsophisticated gauntlets. Rings adorned all his fingers except his ring fingers. His rugged, red-brown ankle boots were embroidered with gold thread. Around his neck was a necklace featuring a silver plate fashioned into a lion's face. Then came his crimson cape. Normally, Yggdrasil items were augmented by inlaying them with data crystals. For this reason, it was extremely difficult to have matching gear, but many people hated looking like a jumble of East and West, so the developers released an update. This update allowed a player who met certain conditions to keep their stats while aligning the style of their equipment. The matching raven black armor that had been covering Aints' entire body until moments before was created with Create Greater Item. This was one of the conditions. The items Aints had equipped included direct hit glasses, a crown of psychic defense, black widow spider clothes, a black belt, J.R. engraper, a Nemean lion, haste boots, and in Yggdrasil, buying and selling was often done at the data crystal level. However, there were times when players created a more powerful item and would then sell what they had been equipping before. The problem was that players could name created items almost anything. The admins would request a change If the name contained words prohibited on TV or insulted someone, there was a strong tendency to avoid items with strange names on the market. The in-game purchase to change an item's name was inexpensive, but not a lot of people used it to buy something. For that reason, most players racked their brains when naming an item. Names from myths or English words were common solutions. Of course, there were exceptions. Naming rings Ring 1, Ring 2, Ring 3, and so on was still charming. Aints had even seen thumb, pointer, and middle before. One of Aints' friends, the warrior Take Mikazuchi, had two dacha that he used for different things. He named the 8th generation of one of them Take Mikazuchi Style 8. Aints' Crimson Cape also had a custom name, Necroplasmic Cape.